Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. And today we're going to be talking about health, natural health. We're going to talk about how amazing and miraculous the human body truly is. And when given the proper nutrients and the proper balance, when the body's systems are in balance, really the body can heal itself. It's a quite amazing, wonderful, and phenomenal thing that the body can do. And we're really going to juxtapose that whole natural approach to health with allopathic medicine, Western medicine, which is the predominant modality of medicine in the United States. Unfortunately, it is more of a reactive paradigm than a proactive paradigm. I'm going to try to relate health, whenever you intervene in something, whether it's health or markets or mother giving birth, you increase the chances for negative outcomes. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to juxtapose and compare natural health, Eastern medicine, proactive health, a holistic view of health with the reactionary allopathic Western paradigm. And we're actually going to reveal a surprising history of allopathic medicine in the United States that many people aren't familiar with, how the Rockefeller family and the Rockefeller Foundation, David Rockefeller, oil tycoon, billionaire, how the role that he played in pushing out the natural, holistic, naturopathy, homeopathy, Eastern medicine, and pushing in the Western allopathic pharmaceutical model. It's a pretty devastating history. And unfortunately, this guy, Rockefeller, and the Rockefeller family really have had a major role in shaping the history of the world. And they continue to this day. We're going to talk about COVID-19, which is on everyone's mind, all that stuff, good old COVID causing all sorts of problems. But I want to talk about COVID in the context of two different paths to deal with pandemic, plandemic, scamdemic, right? I don't even know if it rises to the level of pandemic. It certainly doesn't anymore, according to the World Health Organization, with the number of deaths and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about that as well. I want to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. We're streaming live. I really appreciate doing these shows live because it's more off the cuff and we get to interact with the audience. We'll be taking some of your comments as well. But I want to invite you to check out livefreenow.show. We stream it live through the Conscious Resistance YouTube, through some other channels as well. And then we take the audio and it turns into the podcast. So if you're a podcast fan, maybe you're listening on the podcast feed, it's growing and growing. So thanks to all the podcast listeners. You can go to livefreenow.show and subscribe there with Podbean, or of course you can subscribe with Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff as well. And then I want to shout out our sponsor real quick, freeounceofkratom.com. You can go to freeounceofkratom.com in your message bar there, and you can get a free ounce of kratom, high quality. There it is right there. It's just a powder made from the powderized leaves of the tree, totally natural. We'll talk about that later, CBD and all sorts of other natural remedies. You just pay $5 shipping and handling. We'll send you an ounce for free. If you're tuned in on the Conscious Resistance, I want to remind you to use this URL here, bros.freeounceofkratom.com, bros.freeounceofkratom.com, and the Conscious Resistance gets a portion of the proceeds. Kratom, it's great stuff. Helps a lot of people to overcome pharmaceuticals. We're going to be talking about the pharmaceutical industrial complex as well. The funny thing, all this big tech censorship, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel or on my Facebook page, I don't say support our sponsors and then provide a link to freeounceofkratom.com. No, I say support our sponsors, get a free ounce, put freeounceofkratom.com in your browser address bar. That's right. Big tech is in bed with big government and big pharma, and they're working together in this conglomeration to keep you from getting a lot of really important information. And, you can think one thing or another about the world, but I would really hope more people would support the free flow of ideas and information in the marketplace of ideas. But unfortunately, that's not the situation that we find ourselves in. We find ourselves in an environment where those companies, those individuals, those organizations, those supranational organizations like the World Health Organization have mass influence and sway. So it's up to we alternative media folks to really redouble our efforts to get some solid information out. And that's what we're going to do today on the program. Again, we're going to be taking your comments, stopping by occasionally to check out. A8Q says, can't remember the channel's name, but I think it's Corbett Report. He did a good video on how big pharma came to be. James Corbett does a lot of good work. He's interviewed Derek Bros quite a few times. So I definitely recommend James Corbett. Follow him on the alternative channels too. I'm surprised his channels lasted this long on YouTube because he's got a whole lot of followers and he really shares some solid, compelling stuff. And he does so in a way that is very approachable and rational. It's not like off the rails. It's some solid, well-researched stuff like that. So Justin Ryan says, can you ship to Australia? We can't ship to Australia or Canada or anywhere else. We will in the future. We get a lot of inquiries from Canada and from England as well. But Theocrat says, BitChute has a good documentary on how Rockefeller and Carnegie brought out the medical industry. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We can get right down to it. I'm going to try to go to comments more often throughout the broadcast because I'm always like, we're going to go to your comments. And I wait till the end, and then there's a whole flood of comments. So I'm probably going to take some pauses to get some commentary there. And again, that's the benefit of checking us out live. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into that. A lot of people are not aware that earlier in American history, obviously through the 1800s, there's all sorts of folk remedies, right? There wasn't all these big major hospitals. But in the early 1900s as well, Eastern medicine, naturopathy, homeopathy, there was a more of a holistic view of medicine and health. This was before Rockefeller, as we'll explain, came along and really pulled some deception and some chicanery to usher in the new paradigm of Western medicine. So I want to just kind of contrast the two groups here, and then we're going to get into the history a bit, okay? So here on the left, we have Eastern holistic medicine, and we're going to group in all the homeopathy, naturopathy, all that good stuff. Chiropractic also is a good area of this. It's a holistic approach to the body and to the body's health. It's one that doesn't examine one individual system. A great distinction between this camp and the Western allopathic medicine is the Western allopathic medicine tends to focus on the symptom or the problem rather than striking the radical root. What is it that is out of balance in this person's body that we can address so they can have a more holistic healing, right? So, for example, there's heart issues, heart attack, some sort of dis-ease, right? When you look at the word disease, it's dis-ease. And oftentimes, dis-ease comes about when a body's systems are out of alignment, whether from toxicity, from all sorts of environmental toxicity, food toxicity, high fructose corn syrup, all sorts of stuff, MSG, or maybe environmental toxicity from pollution in the air, from all sorts of crazy radiation and waves all around us, or maybe it's even toxicity from the medicine itself, from opioids, which I'm super familiar with in my industry with Kratom. A lot of these pharmaceuticals have all sorts of chemicals and stuff that you shouldn't be putting in your body, right? I'm not a doctor, no MD by my name. I'm not a naturopath or anything, but I've been studying natural health for the past decade, and I really have a firm grasp on it. And I think one of my talents is the ability to communicate some of these complex ideas in a more consumable way. So that's what we're trying to do here. But when the body has a disease, or a disease is able to manifest or come to fruition, it's because there's initial things that are out of alignment. Another big element that the holistic approach likes to focus on is deficiencies, right? A lot of diseases spring up because there's vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And unfortunately, the diet in the West, especially, thanks again to the damn Rockefellers, not only did the Rockefellers have a major role in bringing about allopathic medicine, which again is focused on surgery and intervention, but they also had a major role in bringing about monocropping to the world. and like the Rockefeller Foundation, and you'll see these documentaries and they'll be like, oh, we need to praise the Rockefellers. They did such a good job at combating world hunger by putting out this new technology and this new methodology for growing food, whereby we use massive equipment to completely tear up the soil and monocrop, put one vegetable in a mass geographic area, right? Rather than a more permaculture system, which is more integrative and more balanced and more in line with nature, right? And that's the reason why there is a need. It's a false need, but if you're going to be doing this monocropping, they have this need for all the chemicals and the pesticides because it doesn't exist in the natural way. It's completely unnatural. And even though, in a utilitarian perspective, that monocropping revolution did create more food, it had the unintended or maybe intended consequence for you conspiratorial thinkers out there of really depleting, debasing, and ruining the soil, taking the nutrients out of the soil, where, again, it's the same approach, right? We always have the proactive, holistic, systems-based thinking, which is really in line with permaculture philosophy, right? Systems, holistic-based thinking, proactive. And then there's this reactive, it's more scientific and technological. We can have science and technology on this side as well, but it's kind of forcing it rather than allowing the natural flow. And that's really what medicine is all about. So Rockefellers debased the soil, went off on a little tangent there. But because of that, the modern American diet and the food that you eat completely ignore the stupid USDA health pyramid. It's such a backwards world we're living in, when in reality, like most of the stuff that comes out of government's mouth, that's like advice for people, you should do the opposite. And government isn't looking out for your best interest. There's a reason, why grains are so big on the food pyramid. It's because the United States government has a revolving door with corn and big ag and stuff like that, right? And so they want to subsidize, they want to push people. That's like milk does a body good. That's a whole campaign, a propaganda campaign to make people money. So you got to think for yourself. And don't take my word for it either. Go do the research, think for yourself. But the point is, the food these days is completely deficient in vitamins and minerals. So it's really important that people supplement with some solid vitamins and minerals. It's really important that people get involved with organic gardening and the local farm down the road. Better yet, start a garden in your backyard and really pay attention to the soil and to the microbiome of the soil. Zach Bush, MD, God bless this guy. He is really solid. He talks about these holistic systems. He really focuses on the microbiome in the soil and how bastardizing the U.S. soil has really created all sorts of consequences, whereby we're having all these health issues and there's this whole health crisis taking place, right? And then you couple that with government intervention into the healthcare and into the insurance, and it's a total problem. But a lot of the root is that the soil has been debased. And the microbiome, that coexistence, that beautiful, natural, spontaneous order that exists amongst microorganisms has been destroyed. And as a result, the nutrients and the vitamins and all the elements and minerals that exist in the soil that humans for centuries would just absorb it up into their diet, right? And they're foraging, it's gone now. He takes it a step further and talks about the gut microbiome. You have that same phenomenon taking place, the gut microbiome, where there's a beautiful synergistic, symbiotic relationship between the gut bacteria, even good and bad bacteria, right? And there's this good, great flow going, and you have a flora down there, this beautiful, wonderful bacteria in your body. A lot of people don't know that over 50% of the human body, the mass of the human body, is foreign cells, foreign DNA. Viruses and bacteria primarily. Everybody flips out. There's a virus here. Oh my God. And this guy, Zach Bush, says that that viruses are like genetic updates. But one of the examples of the Western medicine approach is to pump antibiotics into people anytime they have a bacterial or viral infection, right? Pumping antibiotics, not only does it attack the bad bacteria, the viruses that are causing the problems, but it also attacks the good bacteria and throws off that balance in the gut microbiome. And what I want to present to you today is much like markets and economies. When you stop trying to intervene and instead focus on having a sound foundation that's in line with nature, the body can do a wonderful thing and heal itself. All right, huge digression. We're about to talk about the pesky Rockefellers. When everyone talks about they or the powers that be, right? And it's like, who the hell is that? New World Order, Illuminati, right? It seems like this ephemeral thing. I like to point to the Rockefeller Foundation. It seems like Bill Gates is taking over the banner as the like evil, sinister, dark lord, right? Like Darth Vader or something. But the Rockefellers really have played a huge role in influencing the course of history, and not for the better. So let's talk about the Rockefellers right now. I found this awesome article. It's from Meridian Health Clinic. Let me close these little Facebook windows here. Meridian Health Clinic: How Rockefeller Created the Business of Western Medicine. Right, and we're just going to go through this a little bit. As an alternative medicine practitioner, I have a lot of conversations with patients who are disenchanted with the current Western medicine system. This disenchantment is both related to the quality of care they receive, also the way in which the business of Western medicine is conducted. This post is a brief historical look at the business of Western medicine. This post will not directly address the aspect of patient care. Instead, it will focus on the origins of our current medical business model. So here, let me set the stage for you. Rockefeller was an oil baron, like the robber barons, and he amassed crazy amounts of wealth and wanted to start making more money. And this is when there was innovations with the concept of petrochemicals. So not only do we have oil that we could burn and we could use for things, but we could also create chemicals that could be used for other industries. And around this time, vitamins were beginning to be discovered, really important critical vitamins. And of course, people wanted to make money, wanted to see how they could synthesize those vitamins, right? And it was discovered that oil could be used in this process. So Rockefeller had this great idea of, rather than just having monopolies and amassing massive wealth from oil, he would also leverage his influence and his money and his empire to start getting massive wealth and monopolies in the petrochemical industry and the chemical industry and in medicine as well. Really diabolical, sinister shit here. And in all honesty, the way that these, like, take this book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He really props up Andrew Carnegie and Rockefeller in multiple different instances. And I don't think that these are good people per se, but I do think that we ought to study them for those change makers out there, for those activists who want to create a more free world. We ought to study the strategies utilized by these diabolical multi-generational influencers and families, right? Because they really have been effective at what they're doing. So if we can adopt some of the strategies, leave out the evil, the deception, of course, because we operate with peace, light, and love and freedom. But the whole idea of having a multi-generational plan, right? Not just thinking about the next election or thinking about the present day, but thinking about how can our actions and our strategies and our relationships and our organizations and our businesses and our money and our wealth, how can we plant the seeds today so that 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, those seeds that we planted and the investments that we've made can blossom so we can create a more free, loving society. Because, man, like, reading this diabolical stuff, wow. Again, we're not going to use deception and all that stuff. We're going to use it for light and love. Okay, so Rockefeller starts to understand, wow, maybe I can exploit this here and have monopolies in the other areas. But there's a big problem in Rockefeller's plan. Natural and herbal medicines were very popular in America during the early 1900s. Almost one half of the medical colleges and doctors in America were practicing holistic medicine using extensive knowledge from Europe and Native American traditions. You have to understand, back in the day, there were medical schools, but there was the Eastern wing, and most of the school was dedicated to this more holistic approach. Naturopathy, all sorts of stuff, even integrating Native American traditions and more folk remedies, right? And then there was the allopathic medicine, the surgery wing, that was a lot smaller. It wasn't predominantly intervene. It was more natural. It was more in line with the body's natural ability to heal itself. All right, let's continue. Rockefeller knew that to get total control of the medical industry, he would have to expunge the competition, right? It was Rockefeller that famously said competition is a sin. So to start, Rockefeller used his vast oil money to purchase part of the German pharmaceutical company IG Farben, same company that would later assist Hitler in manufacturing chemicals for war. Great article, very thorough to throw that in there. Now that he controlled a drug manufacturing company, he would proceed with getting rid of his competition. So this is what it's all about. This is the great deception that we need to be aware of, because these tactics are still being utilized today. In the early 1900s, there are a variety of doctors and healing modalities in America. Some of the medical specialties included chiropractic, naturopathy, homeopathy, holistic medicine, and herbal medicine. To eliminate the competition, Rockefeller, he hired a contractor named Abraham Flexner to submit a report to Congress in 1910. This report concluded that there were too many doctors and medical schools in America, and that all natural healing modalities which had existed for hundreds of years were unscientific quackery. The report called for the standardization of medical education, whereby only the AMA, the American Medical Association, another monopoly, would be allowed to grant medical school licensure in the U.S. Certainly, Flexner's report did have some valid points, but unfortunately, the motives for the report were entirely driven by Rockefeller's desire for complete control of the medical system. Based on the report, Congress acted upon the Flexner's recommendations and changed laws relating to medical practice. Incredibly, allopathic medicine became the standard modality, even though at the time its treatment methods were bloodletting, surgery, which was quite barbaric at the time, and the injection of toxic heavy metals, lead and mercury, to supposedly displace disease. Rockefeller then teamed up with Andrew Carnegie. They got huge grants. They started funding the medical schools. They even went into China. This wasn't just Western medicine. They then went and started setting up medical schools in the same program in China. And so there you have it, folks. Additionally, Rockefeller really helped to build the foundation of the pharmaceutical industrial congressional complex. Got to throw in congressional, right? Originally, I think it was an Eisenhower speech. We must not let unwarranted influence of the military industrial complex. In his original speech, he had military industrial congressional complex, because Congress has a big role in solidifying the revolving door. And so much of Western allopathic medicine has a profit motive, right? Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I sell Kratom. I make a profit on this product, right? It's not nearly as expensive as if you have some sort of prescription, of course, but there seems to be a tendency in Western medicine whereby the money isn't in the cure, it's in the comeback, right? That's like a drug dealer thing. You don't make money if you get your client to quit taking drugs. You make money when they keep coming back. And a lot of these, that's evidence in the fact that a lot of these pharmaceuticals have really terrible side effects. And one of the things that the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies do is you take this for pain, but now all of a sudden you're nauseous. And you come back to the doctor, hey, doc, the pain seems to be doing a little better, but I've really had this kind of rumbling in my stomach, this constant feeling of nausea. It's making it really hard for me to focus at work. Oh, no worries. We have a prescription for that. Then it's like, man, now I'm starting to feel a little anxious. I'm in this pain. It's not always good. I'm taking all this medicine. I'm struggling at work to keep up because I feel kind of queasy from these medicines. Oh, that's okay. No worries. We have a medicine for anxiety that you can take as well. And it just keeps on going down the line. Never is it I always thought this might be a rumor, but I actually asked people that went to medical school. There's not an emphasis on nutrition whatsoever in Western medical schools. The doctors that people go to for advice, they aren't taught and trained on the importance of diet. You literally are what you eat. So when you go to the doctor, you have pain. They don't stop to say, okay, what's your diet? Maybe some do, right? I'm not saying that all MDs are terrible. All MDs are solely driven by profit. That's very far from the truth, but that does exist. And just because someone has an MD next to their name doesn't make them exempt from natural human desires and self-interest. Same thing with a police officer or politician, right? Then all of a sudden become some holy person, some saint when you put a badge on or when you put your scrubs on, right? And so the first questions when you deal with a naturopath or a more holistic approach is like, okay, let's try to get an assessment of where this person is at. Diet, stress, inflammation, right? Because most pain comes from inflammation. So the first question is, okay, are you eating foods that lead to inflammation? Okay. And I'm going to rant and rave, but I'm going to drop some tips and some strategies on you as well. Because I'm 36 now. And for the past 10 years, I used to be uncomfortable like almost all the time. I had little aches and just kind of I just had discomfort, like a constant mild discomfort. I also always used to have this red rosacea stuff on my face. It still flares up, right? When you tap into this new paradigm of medicine, you begin to very much listen to your body. The body gives us signals. The body gives us information. Same thing with emotions and feelings. When you start to feel that tension in your back and you're like, I'm getting really pissed off. My significant other, I can't believe she said that to me. That's a signal. Oh yeah, that physiological change that happens in my body. And when you can be mindful of that and when you can listen, right? Everyone's always stuck in their head and they're so arrogant, like blah, blah, blah. They're just driving forward. They're distracted. When you can stop, quiet the mind, meditation's a wonderful practice. You can listen. Oh, I have that. You're mindful now, right? So usually you just play out the program of yelling or picking a fight with the significant other. But now you're like, oh, I got that tension in my back. That usually means that I'm angry. And far too often when I'm angry, I lose my temper and it just turns into a really nasty situation. Thankfully, I've been engaging in mindfulness practice, and now I can recognize when that signal gets sent to me. That means that I need to go do my breathing practices, or perhaps I should just go on a walk, or maybe I need to go in the garage and hit the punching bag. Just the same, when you can quiet the mind, when you can really pay attention to the body is the best instructor. More so than a medical doctor, more so than your chiropractor or a naturopath, listening and getting in tune with your body. So I used to just think all throughout high school when I was younger, I just had rosacea. Sometimes I would call it Croatia, like this popped in my head, but it's like, oh no, I just have red on my face. Then I did a total diet reset at the advice from my naturopath. And me and my ex-wife did strict paleo for a month, cutting out carbs and cutting out all of this bread and stuff. And so you do this like strict diet, you can do paleo, you can do keto, then you add stuff back, right? And when I added the gluten back and had some bread, or a beer, actually, it was like a wheat beer, it was like, whoa, I felt heavy. My face immediately got red. That was my signal. That was the information I needed, that perhaps gluten, wheat, beer doesn't jive with my body. Right now, I still eat fried food from time to time, and immediately I get a little bit of stuffiness in my nose, and my face gets red back. Right, but when I'm in a place of optimal health and I'm very disciplined because I know what my body needs and what my body rejects, and when I'm in a constant place of discipline, even for a matter of a week or two, I begin to see that my face is totally clear, and not only that, I feel so much more healthy. So it's really important that we listen to our body and we let our body give us the information we need, because our body knows better than anyone else. So I think there was a health tip that I was going to mix in too, but then I got into another tip. The tip is to listen to your body. And another good thing that's really important is to have a baseline knowledge of health and of healthcare, and of medicines and pharmaceuticals and modalities and surgeries, right? Because far too often people are like, well, I have an expert for that, right? Like a mechanic. It's good to you don't need to know how to replace the radiator or whatever, or the carburetor, but to have a baseline knowledge of how an engine works and the systems and this particular noise, maybe that's a fan, or this is coming from the air conditioner, right? So then when you go to the expert, the mechanic, they can't take you for a ride. Same thing with a medical doctor. It's really good to have a baseline level of knowledge. So when you go, you can ask really important questions. And it's never a good idea to just take the doctor's word for it wholeheartedly, right? Okay, so there's some really important vitamins and supplements that people can take. Again, as we talked about earlier, the soil has been completely depleted of nutrients, in large part thanks to the Rockefellers once again. And so one of the things that I would recommend is having a solid multivitamin, multi-mineral supplement. The one that I appreciate is called Tangy Tangerine. Look, this is my Christmas story mug. It's always Christmas for me. What does it say? Show me how the little piggy eats. Oh, that's cute. So this is Tangy Tangerine. It's made by this guy, Dr. Joel Wallach. Super cool, super hip dude, medical doctor, also a veterinarian. He actually wrote this book called Epigenetics. This guy, Dr. Joel Wallach, a lot of people are like, well, I'm just genetically inclined to have this genetic expression for alcoholism or for this particular disease that runs in my family, right? Well, he demonstrated that when the body's given proper nutrients and when it's in a better environment and when there's better health, that those genes never express themselves. Those diseases never express themselves. Dr. Joel Wallach, lots of great Let's Play doctor, been around for decades and decades. He used to go on the Alex Jones show. So he's like-minded. He's a conspiratorial guy. He'll keep up with those kinds of conversations, but it's called Longevity. It's also MLM. I don't have any problems with MLMs. If you want to participate in that, that's great. If you want to just buy the product, that's great as well. You can buy it on Amazon as well. But it's called Beyond Tangy Tangerine, multivitamin, multimineral. And the cool thing about this is whenever you get a vitamin, it's like 100% of your daily value. The whole daily value thing is just totally bogus. Again, that stuff comes from the government, the food pyramid. It's all BS. So you'll see it's like vitamin C, 355%, and all the different vitamins and all sorts of stuff. So this is that. It's really good. Holy shit, I feel great. I'd start with a good solid multivitamin, multi-mineral. The cool thing about this Tangy Tangerine, it's so packed full of vitamins. When you drink it, you find that you're not as hungry, right? Because the way that food is these days in America is that it's so depleted, you're eating a bunch of empty nutrients, and we see people just continue to eat. They're not getting full. What the body's desiring when you want to eat something is the nutrition, is those vitamins and minerals, the building blocks of your cells, right? To stay healthy and balanced. And the body needs that. And when it's just empty calories, you just leads to a lot of weight loss. I want to talk about vaccines. I never really get down and dirty on the vaccine thing because I'm by no means an expert on the topic. You don't have to be a doctor to be an expert, by the way. But I do have 2 children, both of which are unvaccinated. Never get the flu shot, none of that stuff. My kids are in great health. I'm going to dive into that. But first, I'm going to go to some of your comments here. Make it a point to do more comments. I always wait till the end, and then there's just so much stuff. Doc Chronic says, former President Ronald Reagan said it best. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. This is true. The government's not here to help. The government is here to hurt. The Bible describes how to properly grow our food. Theocrat, if you're still on, I'd love to hear some of the advice and insights. There's a lot of really sacred knowledge that's passed on through the Bible. That's really important. Jesus Christ, too, whether you believe he rose on the 3rd day, right, and is the Son of God, and then there's all controversy with how that all works and all the different camps and stuff. I do believe that it's more than likely Jesus Christ was at least a historical person. I'm agnostic when it comes to Christianity. Maybe he did rise to Son of God. Maybe he was some Buddha-type figure that managed to reach some sort of state where he became one with the universe, right? That's why Buddhism is such a beautiful philosophy, not even really a religion, although there are Buddhist religions. And it's very likely that Jesus Christ, there's this book that we used to sell, Brave New Books, called The Lost Years, Jesus' Lost Years. And he spent a lot of time, I think it was like 18 to 25 or something like that. After 18, there's not really much written about him in the Bible. Well, he spent what's said that he did is he went over to the East and to India and sat with gurus and spiritual leaders and learned about all that. And there's this whole healing thing, right? And so he also used essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and gold. And so it's possible a lot of his stuff, it's miraculous. But what if Jesus Christ was just really freaking with it and in tune with his body and the body of others? And he was able to, kind of manifest that universal love and connection through energy. I like the study of how religion, how there could be some scientific merit, or it's like metaphysical, but it's also physical. And it could be this spiritual faith aspect, but it could also be a really fucking badass mofo that managed to reach that next level in his human form that was also in his energy and metaphysical spirit form. I digress there. But I'd be curious, Theocrat, if you want to lay some of the advice that's present in the Bible as far as growing food and all that stuff goes. The more I look, the more I see conspiracy theory, the more I get trolled on Twitter for seeing. Time to move on to platforms with people who care to seek truth first, judge later. Yeah, we're experiencing this crazy phenomenon. I've been involved in like the truther liberty movement since 2002. And there was a lot of trolling back then too, and labeling and pointing the finger conspiracy theorists. But now it's just taken on a whole nother level. Now we have this big tech censorship taking place, which really makes it hard to get ideas out there. But I want to point out, and I'm going to do a whole video or podcast on this. You know what we used to do back in the day to get the truth out? We'd get 100 stacks of DVDs. We'd put them in this like 20-row DVD burner. And we just straight burn 9/11 truth documentaries and conspiracy documentaries and expose the New World Order or global government agenda. And we'd stand out on the corner University of Texas campus or Texas State University. And we'd just be handing out DVDs. Hey, you want a free DVD? Hey, you want a free DVD? Hey, you want a free DVD? So never forget, we have this whole social media thing, and it's really easy and accessible. It's even easy and accessible for me to do this video, right? Thank God I'm reaching a whole lot of people. Shout out Derek Bros and the Conscious Resistance Network. But really the best place to reach people is in person. And now we have this whole COVID thing going on, which I need to address as well. This is one of my stream of consciousness. I didn't do much prep. I think it's better that way when I just flow with it. But sometimes I finish it and then I'm like, oh, I meant to say that. But with the COVID stuff going on, I recently went to an outdoor rave party where there was 200 to 300 people. Probably about 1 to 2% of them were wearing masks. There's a lot of hugs. There's a lot of love. And there's a big old crowd of people dancing, sweating right up next to one another. It was a very beautiful sight. And at that cool outdoor rave party, when I'm walking up, I'm like, the freaking pandemic's over. People, there's such a distinction between the people that are still really afraid and staying home and wearing masks, and the people that just kind of see through it. The people that see through it and see the whole conspiratorial angle of it and how it's being rolled out to further this technocracy. And then there's the people that are like, I don't care, man. The people that probably don't vote, they just don't care. They're more free, arguably, than most other people. And I was talking with some friends that we saw there, and one of the girls in the circle, she didn't shake hands or hug. She's like, oh no, I'm distancing. And so we're like, okay, that's cool. We'll honor that. And then we talked about it later and like, oh wow, she's the only one that didn't give any hugs and stuff. And my friend pointed out like, yeah, I think the best way to end all this stuff, because he at one point was posting online, some fear stuff, and we said social distance and stay home. But then he began to see it was BS, which any critical thinker I hope could. And he's like, the way to really wake people up out of this fear slumber with COVID is to give them a hug. And you give that hug, and so many people are lacking that human connection. And you give that hug, and the oxytocin drops, and the endorphins flare out, and people are like, huh, I really missed that. So the point is, forget about the social media. Yes, it's important. Yes, we can reach people, but people aren't going to social media to learn from you, buddy, DD Specs. And I don't know. I hope people are there's a lot of echo chamber going on when I do these podcasts, and I really like to reach those people that are on the fence. But the most important thing that you can do to reach people is to talk to them in person, host in-person meetups, there's a lady that was sitting down. I should have talked to her. I was in my own little world, but I went to cafe. I go to this cafe. It's my dive. I go there almost every day after I drop the kids off school. And they go to school, private school, no masks. It's freaking awesome. And I walked in and was sitting down, and I started to wear this mask early on. I don't wear my mask into very many stores, especially the big box stores, right? But I started wearing it early on because I wanted to respect this establishment, because in Austin, businesses would get $1,000 fine, even though it wasn't enforced. But I don't want to make a stink of it now because I'm friends with all the staff and stuff. But either way, so I sit down, and the waitress comes up to me, and another waiter comes up, and they're like, you want the toddy? I guess that's what you call it. Iced coffee drink. I'm like, no, I'm going to do tea today, blah, blah, blah. And the lady looks over, oh, you're a regular, huh? And then she told the waitress, I haven't been here since March. And I was thinking like, oh, this lady just literally hasn't came out since March. She's been sheltered in. So there's just such a crazy distinction between people now, where there's so many people that just totally buy into it, and there's so many people that are ready to move on from it. But I wish I would have talked to her. point I was trying to make is that's the most effective way to reach people, is just through conversation in the street, at the restaurant, at the grocery store. A lot of people are kind of perplexed and disillusioned. And if you can just kind of reach them and be like, I think we're going to be okay. I think this is a little bit overblown and overhyped. And I think it's about time for us to get back to life as usual. I've been taking all natural freeze-dried beef organ supplements and love them. Rockefeller banned cannabis and hemp because farmers were making ethanol from hemp. Maybe even the reason for prohibition, banning CBD, God's medicine. Oh, man. Yep. CBD is another part of it. CBD is a great natural remedy as far as pain and people that are struggling with pain. There's all sorts of medicines, natural medicines, herbal medicines, right, that line up really beautifully with the body. And there's this amazing synergy. And it really shows us that while we have this intellect and we've evolved this mind and this consciousness and this ability to think in the future and plan like other animals don't have, we still are a part of the whole system and of the earth. I was going to say Mother Earth, but I know people on this channel are like, Mother Earth, that's some Satanist shit or something like that. But whatever, Mother Earth, we get all sorts of stuff from our earth and from the system. But the cannabis plant is a perfect example of the synergy between animal and plant and earth. Our body has an endocannabinoid system within it that has a series of receptors. CB1 and CB2 are two different receptors. So let's talk about CBD for a little bit. You can get CBD at mybraidbotanicals.com if you want to support me, get some high quality stuff, mybraidbotanicals.com. You'll be fueling my fire. You'll be helping me to feed my kids and be helping me to continue to do activism like this. But get it from wherever you can, because CBD is really great stuff, which helps with so many different things. But the Western paradigm, the control paradigm, the Rockefeller paradigm is to shut these things down because they genuinely help people and they're genuinely very affordable and easy to access without the need for a doctor or an expert, without this intermediary. The powers that be love for there to be an intermediary between you and the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of health, the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of wealth. They loved, you got to have an expert, got to consult that doctor, got to consult your financial advisor, got to make sure you're doing the right mainstream thing if you want to protect that money and not take any risks, right? But all the while, it's like stay within our system, stay within our paradigm, okay? And so CBD, the cannabis plant, it's been condemned, it's been prohibited, it's been propagandized with reefer madness, right? You see somebody freak out in reefer madness and they like start freaking out and like stabbing people and you're like, damn, that's some good shit. I need to find me some shit like that. But the body has an endocannabinoid system, CB1, CB2 receptor. Cannabis plant has different cannabinoids. They're essentially like the active compounds in the cannabis plant. One of them is THC. It's what most people are familiar with. It's the compound in cannabis that gets you high. It interacts with the CB1 receptor, which is in the brain. This gives you senses and feelings of euphoria. There's another CB receptor in the body's endocannabinoid system that's called the CB2 receptor. Now, the cannabinoid CBD, it stimulates and binds and interacts with the CB2 receptor, which is found in your spleen. Now, the purpose of the CB2 receptor is to regulate homeostasis in the body. In other words, the CB2 receptor helps the body to maintain balance in its systems, which is precisely why when you're having inflammation or pain in a certain area and you take CBD drops, bloop, 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 or you smoke some CBD flower, which we also sell, it goes through your body, it stimulates the CB2 receptor, and it says, oh, there is an imbalance in this area. We have excessive pain, excessive inflammation, and it encourages the body's systems to go balance that out. All right, let's go send in some endorphins. Let's go relieve that pain. Let's go deal with that inflammation. Very beautiful plant, amazing plant, completely demonstrative of that synergy and that balance and that interconnectedness, right? We talked about Buddhism briefly earlier. Interconnectedness is a huge tenet in the Buddhist philosophy, that interconnectedness between plant, earth, and human. Ooh. And when we can really embrace that balance between plant medicine, kratom, peppermint, oregano, essential oils, very beautiful thing. No, that's quackery. That's snake oil. No, it's not. It helps. And I don't care what you say or what your science says or whatever, when you can have an experience and benefit from it yourself, you really see that. You really can see that. When we can bridge that and get back to our roots, again, the roots in this country, as well as indigenous cultures, right? When I spend time in Mexico, we go to those Mexican markets, man, it's a trip. It is a trip, especially in the meat market. But they got all the curandera, like witch doctor, herbalists, all sorts of stuff. You go to the stand and they'll bust you out, and they got the tinctures and they got it all hanging down. That was the way. This is the way, right? That's the way. That was even the way in this country. But the interventionists, the monopoly men, had to come and screw it up for everybody. And now everyone is so dense and ignorant and incapable of thinking for themselves that so many of Americans have lost their way. And we have this crazy paradigm whereby conventional food at the grocery store is the food that has chemicals all over it. That's what's considered conventional. No. Conventional food is growing food at the family farm and getting most of the food that you eat on your table from your backyard. That's conventional, or at least from the farm down the road that didn't need to blast it with pesticides because they were farming in a synergistic way, and they were maintaining the essence of their soil, and they were enriching the soil. They knew the magic of the soil. There's so much magic in the soil, but so many people have lost their way. Let me bring it back to vaccines and to COVID-19. Another crazy thing is you're considered kooky and weird and like this anti-vaxxer when you don't want to inject these crazy chemicals into the body of a newborn infant, right? So what's considered normal these days, normal, is injecting a vaccine that was, a lot of the active components were grown in aborted fetal tissue. That's what's considered normal. And thinking like, oh man, I just don't feel comfortable injecting all of these chemicals and these active viruses and aborted baby tissue into my body's bloodstream or my child's bloodstream when they just came out of the womb and into the world. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. And you're labeled as a quack. That's absolutely nuts. But here we have, I want to show you something that really illustrates the essence of where we are and how far gone we are in this country. Maybe I shouldn't say we, because I'm not participating in that whole paradigm. No, my kids aren't vaccinated, and I'm all granola and hippie when it comes to it. And like, I do want to point out, I should have pointed this out earlier, there is a place for Western allopathic reactionary medicine, right? My son broke his leg. He's broken both legs. The kid's really active and pretty wild. He's broken both legs. He went to the hospital for that, right? We weren't like, oh, let's just get the birch oil, because tree oils with essential oils and doTERRA and stuff, the tree oils are good for mending and bone health, right? Or let's pump out the magnesium and calcium. He'll be okay. No, there's a place for that. You go to the hospital for those types of interventive procedures, right? I even myself spent 21 days in the ICU. I don't talk about this much. I have a scar here. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it on camera. Whoosh. And there's one here. Where is it? Which side? One of these sides. Where did it go? There's a scar there. And there's scars here for chest tubes. And there's a great big scar here. I got punched in the face standing up for a friend when I was 20, maybe 21, 20. We were at a party. We were drunk, stupid. This guy was messing with my friend. I went to defend him, got punched in the face, shattered my jaw right here. Bacteria from my mouth spread in through my jaw and my body into my lungs and heart. And I had this terrible, terrible, terrible infection. The doctors couldn't figure out what it was. I was in the ICU for 21 days. Now, I didn't want to go to my mom and tell her what had happened. I was at college at the time in San Marcos. And so the infection just got swollen like crazy. It's possible, had I started pounding colloidal silver, nebulizing with colloidal silver, doing my tooth pack that I do now, that I could have combated it. I don't know. Either way, I ended up in the hospital, and boy, was I glad that there was morphine and some doctors looking after me, a team of doctors. And boy, was I glad that they had the ability to do surgery, to go in and suck out all that stuff and stick tubes into my chest that would get the gunk and black nasty out of my lungs, right? There's a place for Western allopathic medicine, but that place is for this much use. A large majority of the time, the body can heal itself when given the proper nutrients, right? So we need to snap out of this paradigm. All right, before I digress any further, a video was circulating on social media, and it's a video that's shared in public schools. The children are being propagandized in the public schools now that they're back. And the ones that aren't back, they're watching this on their Zoom class session. And it's Dr. Fauci and the National Institute of Health infiltrating the mind of America's youth to convince them that the vaccine is okay and safe and that you need to stay the hell away from people. So we're going to watch some of this real quick. And there's a scene in it that perfectly illustrates my point and the distinction between the natural, organic, holistic approach, letting the body, giving the body's proper nutrients, proper nutrition, avoiding toxins, and letting the body do its damn thing, as opposed to the reaction, medicine, the pharmaceutical, the money making, the cutting people open. All right, so let's just go through this a little bit and see what we got here.
Hello, and welcome to Brain Pop News. Few scientists are household names, but our next guest is. You've probably seen Dr. Anthony Fauci in the news lately. He's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. That makes him one of the federal government's top advisors for the coronavirus pandemic. He also heads a team of government researchers who are working on a vaccine. Dr. Fauci has been a leading voice in public health since the 1980s. Back then, he took on the HIV/AIDS epidemic. He convinced the government to take it seriously and invest billions of dollars in research. Today,
let's stop it right there, though. Let's pause there. I wish we could reach the school children. There's a lot of stuff. Plandemic, the first part, really talked about Fauci making a whole lot of money during this HIV crisis. And I don't know if you've seen the Dallas Buyers Club with Matthew McConaughey. God bless him. Awesome, incredible movie. There's all these folks that had HIV and were dying of AIDS in the 80s and 90s, and they didn't have access to these pharmaceuticals, right? Again, there's a place for pharmaceuticals, although there's some hardcore stuff that, people have healed things naturally through other ways. But like I've just read recently, someone was able to cure HIV with their own natural immunities, and they no longer have HIV. But the FDA, the monopoly, the cartel, FDA is a medicine cartel, right? The Federal Reserve Bank is a cartel on medicine. In the city of Austin, there's a taxi cartel, which really made it hard for Uber and Lyft to do business. Uber and Lyft backed out of there for a while. There's a medical cartel. The Food and Drug Administration is at the top of this cartel, and they exercise a medical monopoly. They make it very difficult for me to do business when it comes to kratom, that's for damn sure. But early on, there were experimental pharmaceuticals that people were starting to find luck with, but they had to go through all the red tape. They'd invest the hundreds of millions of dollars in the clinical trials. Meanwhile, people are dropping dead. And I didn't see Anthony Fauci doing anything to help that. In fact, he probably started slowing that along. I just want to throw that out there, just the propaganda that's being blatantly fed to the children of this world. And Anthony Fauci's made out to be a hero. One more quick note. A lot of people are pessimistic about the prospects for liberty and where we are with, in our course of human history when it comes to this whole New World Order stuff. But I would caution you to be optimistic, because I want to do a whole video on this. The powers that be, the Rockefeller, Fauci, United Nations, this cabal, right? Secret societies, they overplayed their hand when it comes to COVID-19. And a lot of people are seeing through the bullshit. And that's evidence. I was listening to NPR. I like to tune into the status, the national propaganda radio from time to time, just to see what's being put out there. And they had a story with Anthony Fauci, and he's like, and maybe it was something else, NPR, but he's like whining about his family's getting death threats and stuff. That's not excusable. That's not a good thing. But it just illustrates, like, you would think that Fauci, the way that they're parading him out, it's probably a Trump thing too. Trump, love him or hate him, he's thrown some wrenches in the gears of this campaign, because the COVID-19 is a campaign. They had Event 201. This has all been pre-scripted, just like 9/11 was pre-scripted. So I just want to throw that out. I don't know. It's hard for me to watch this video and not feel triggered, but here we go. Let's get back with it. I'm going to skip around a little bit so we can get to the part that I really want to hammer home. In fact, let's go ahead and look. So they start with old man Fauci, bringing them out to the kids.
In this all together. You want to wear a mask if you're old enough to wear it and you can keep it on. Okay, kids, take a look. So you wear a mask. The next thing is you stay, if possible, and this is tough because you got a lot of friends. You want to keep physical distance to the extent you can, and you want to wash your hands as often as you can, and don't touch your face or your nose or your mouth. That's not easy to do, but if you concentrate on it, you'll get used to it.
Can kids convince their parents and other adults to follow the guidelines?
Parents listen to their children. If they come home and say, Mom, Dad, I was told by Dr. Fauci that you should be wearing a mask, you should be physically distant, 6 feet or more, and you shouldn't hang out in crowds. So if you're thinking about going out to this crowded place tonight, do me a favor, Mom and Dad, stay home and let's do something at home together.
Okay, this is absolutely disgusting and pathetic and demonstrative of why it's very important if you have children and you're a free thinker, liberty lover, you're hip to the whole agenda going down, which is probably most of the 77 people that are watching right now live. You don't have your kids in public school. And if you do insist on having your kids in public school, because you don't have to, you can, there's not much more important in your life than your children, and you can shift your life around so that your children aren't in public school, right? No judgment, understand life is difficult sometimes and families got to earn a living and so on and so forth. But if your kids are in public school, you make sure that they have the skills to think for themselves. Don't turn them against their teachers and be all extreme about it, but let them know that public schools are run by the government. And you know what we've talked about, the government isn't always looking out for your best interests. I don't know how far along some people's children are, but my kids are like 110% with it and already are anticipating how they can circumvent taxes and shit when they're older. And they're like, we don't want to be an employee at a W-2. I would never even have one of those. I'm just going to run my own business. It's like, wow, what a proud father. But this is the type of shit. You send your kids away to the government has a hold of them, right? And then the government can indoctrinate them against the parents and against the family. So if you've successfully been sheltered in and the kids are naturally asking questions about COVID-19, and you're naturally, you don't want to, if you have young kids, you don't want to betray their innocence, which is something that I think maybe my kids were a little bit, exposed to the truth of things early on. But like we're driving around the car and the news is on and they're talking about police officers killing people and stuff, and conversations spring up. But I think it's really important to preserve your children's innocence. They don't need to be exposed to all of the BS that's going on in the world. However, not allow them to be ignorant to the nature of the beast. Okay, because you could go along and you teach your children, yeah, it was a virus. A lot of people were concerned at first, but it turns out that it's not as deadly as people thought. However, there are still a whole lot of people that are afraid. And, there's certain things out there in the world that people want to make money and people want to control other people. But what we've talked about, that's why we try to stay natural. We eat good organic food. We play in the dirt and we build up our immune system, right? You're teaching them that. And then they go back to school and now they're all confused. And it's like, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was parroted as this hero and held up as this saint, as this godlike figure in my school today, he said that we shouldn't be going to meet with the neighbor's house or having the barbecue this weekend. They just get your children and they mind F them, and it's not acceptable. Now, this gets even worse. And this shows me that they're desperate with the vaccine thing. And it's really what this video is a sales campaign for the freaking vaccine. And they're so desperate that they need to target the children because a lot of the parents are seeing through the bullshit. Now watch this vaccine thing. And I want to point this out. I should have done a whole video on this because it's is super creepy propaganda. But I want to point out the paradigm that I started off this whole video about, again, the dichotomy, the distinction between holistic, let the body do its thing, and interventive, controlling and messing stuff up. So watch when Fauci talks about the vaccine. All right, here we go. Let's go back to the video.
Everyone by getting a vaccine.
Can you explain a little about how a vaccine works?
With a from getting infected. To older people, from my back to school, your teachers and your health officials are going to try as best as possible to protect you from getting infected. When a vaccine comes along, and we will get a vaccine probably by the end of this year, the beginning of 2021, and if the vaccine proves to be safe and effective, we all should get vaccinated. I know I'm going to get vaccinated when we get a vaccine. So we should make sure we protect everyone by getting a vaccine.
I know I'm going to get vaccinated when we get a vaccine.
Can you explain a little about how a vaccine works?
All right, here it comes.
Vaccine, what you want is you want the body to see a part of the virus that induces in it a response to ultimately protect you. Now, when you get infected, you can get sick or you can get mild symptoms. But when you recover because the body did something to get rid of the virus. It made what's called an antibody, which is a protein that when it sees the virus, it attacks the virus. So when we make a vaccine, we've got to mimic natural infection, but we don't want to make you get infected. We want to do something that's really safe so that your body will make all of these antibodies, but it won't need to get sick.
So,
you see what happened just there? You see that? A safe vaccine, for one, is something that he said. But you see, if I was in that school as a little 10-year-old, be like, excuse me, I thought we just saw that the body can make the antibodies itself. Isn't that what's called an immune system? My mommy and daddy taught me about that. I know you don't teach us about it here, Mrs. Quackery. You see that? That's the whole paradigm I'm trying to present in this video. You have one method, give the body proper nutrition, avoid toxins, play in the sun, get your hands dirty, grow your own food, be happy, avoid stress, and create a environment where the body can heal itself. So COVID comes along, SARS-CoV-2, lab made or not, maybe it's not even real, who freaking knows? I think that there's actually a virus. And after some stuff that I saw from this Chinese virologist, it's probably more than likely lab made, which really has so many crazy implications. But it's like, the virus comes along, gets into the body. The body's like, oh, there's a new virus in here. Maybe it's not even a new virus. Maybe it's just an older coronavirus, right? Because the coronavirus is what gives you the common cold. And the body's like, this probably could replicate itself and cause some problems. Let's go ahead and initiate immune system response. T cells, let's go do our thing. And then you don't ever even have a significant viral load. That's why I tell people, knock on wood. I don't know if this is the case, but I have strong intuition and I know my body really well. If I were, maybe I already came into contact with COVID. There's been some times where I felt a little bit down briefly for like a day. And I'm like, oh, I think my body's fighting something off. That's what sickness is for me. I feel a little bit slower, a little bit sluggish. And I'm like, I think my body's fighting something off. And then the next day it's like, back to normal. I have a feeling if the infection were to enter my body, or any healthy person for that matter, the viral load would never be enough to even spread. That's why asymptomatic spread probably isn't a freaking thing. It's a relatively weak virus for 99% of the people, literally, right? It's a relatively weak virus. That's why everyone says, oh, this is such a pandemic. You have to get tested to even know you have the virus. The body has a natural mechanism in place after a very long line of human evolution. It's very good at what it does. And when it comes into contact with a virus or a pathogen, when given the proper nutrition, avoiding toxins, healthy, avoiding stress, the body is a miraculous machine that can heal itself without external intervention, without an experimental vaccine. Nobody knows what the hell is going on with it. It's going to have all sorts of chemicals and stuff. And you can bet your bottom dollar the big tech censorship we were talking about, as the vaccine gets released, they're going to start blocking and cutting people out of big tech, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter quick. Someone's going to get a hold of the vaccine insert, spread it online, and we're all going to be like, vaccines bogus, blah, blah, blah. What about this ingredient? And they're going to be like, nope, can't do that because we got to carry forward our agenda. All right, we're not going to watch the rest of this video. Again, I said this would have been a good video to just do a whole thing on because it's really freaking provocative. I just want to point out, another approach. Oh, where'd that go? Is Sweden. Sweden, they had the virus come around, and I don't know if they have as much international travel. Somebody pointed out, so it's obviously comparing apples to oranges, but they had no lockdown. They had no mask mandate. They didn't force or mandate social distancing, although there was an element of social distancing that took place and people were kind of personally responsible and let's see what goes on here. But in reality, what happened in Sweden is they let the people get the virus and develop herd immunity. And now, fast forward, what do we have? Here's Sweden. Now, Sweden did have a significant number of deaths, although not the most deaths, but they had the wherewithal to admit that they had some bad policy by sending COVID positive patients into nursing homes. And that was responsible for a lot of the deaths. So they went through their thing. They had their wave. This is cases, of course. Cases is less important than hospitalizations and deaths. But look, they petered out, man. They don't have any deaths anymore practically at all. And now we see this little wave happening, a second wave. Look, this is when you half-ass it. This is when you have like, oh my God, it's really terrible in Spain. Now let's force lockdown, blah, blah, blah. Never allow natural herd immunity to take place. They're like, we need to have herd immunity, but only through the vaccine, not naturally. It's such bad policy. It's so backwards. So bad. But now we see France, the whole European Union, UK, everybody's spiking. Meanwhile, the Swedes are just chilling. All right, I'm going to finish up. We're going to go to some more comments. There's a lot of comments. There's somebody that has some misinformation about kratom here that I want to comment on. But to finish up, to finally solidify my point, I want to present the two schools of thought when it comes to how should we respond to COVID. I know everyone in the comments is going to be like, COVID's not even real. There is no virus. The PCR tests are just getting fragments of RNA and blah, blah, blah. That stuff could already be in there. But for the purpose of our discussion, I want us to start from the base assumption that there is a SARS-CoV-2 virus, whether it's man-made or not, and that people do get the virus, okay? And that if someone wanted to avoid getting the virus or avoid having harmful effects from the virus, there's two schools of thought. One, government school of thought, is to wash your hands religiously, obsessively, is to spray down all your surfaces with Lysol and bleach and chemicals and alcohol, and to dry your hands out with alcohol and to kill all of the germs on your hands, is to shelter in, to stay the F home, right? What do they say? Alone, together, or something stupid like that. Is to not go be around people and to wear a mask. And when the time comes, to get your vaccine. That's the government program, right? Now here's the alternative, holistic, healthy program. Live your life. Wash your hands if they get dirty. Go outside and play. Get your hands dirty in the dirt when you're planting food and growing food. Soak up vitamin D. Go exercise. Be joyful. Visit family and friends. Be a happy human being. You see, because I don't know what the intentions are of the National Institute of Health and the FDA and the government and the CDC and the World Health Organization, but I don't think they have good intentions. In fact, I think a large majority of them are driven by profit motive and their relationships with the pharmaceutical, industrial, congressional complex. And I do think a very small percentage of them are sinister, diabolical, manipulative, deceitful little weasels that are hell-bent on dominating the population, reducing the population, and creating an environment whereby there will never, ever be a revolution again, and they can sit in their position of power with access to radical life extension technology and live forever with everyone else as slaves. That's the small little Illuminati conspiracy. But let's take a look at what happens when you obsessively are washing your hands and just blasting them with Lysol and bleach and stuff. We talked about Zach Bush earlier and the microbiome, where there's a microbiome and film and that beautiful universe all over your hands and your whole body. And there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And there's like the whole body's one big giant system. And in fact, it's one big system that's interconnected with the entire earth and the world around us. And when you constantly are washing your hands, you're actually depleting and weakening your body's ability to fight infection. Same thing with surfaces and stuff like that. Same thing with staying at home and not mixing it up with other human beings. As I said that, there was a little droplet that sprayed out. Oh my God, we're screwed. But that phenomenon of droplets spraying out, sneezing, talking, touching, hugging, kissing, loving, swapping fluids, that is a beautiful dance of symbiosis, synergy, interconnectivity that creates not just a body's immune system, but an immune system for a community, right? A larger, broader perspective of balance and maintaining that balance. And just as the farmer that rapes his soil and depletes his soil and needs to rely on chemicals and Monsanto and all these petrochemical phosphate fertilizers in order for his plants to actually grow, so too are human beings at the behest of public health, pillaging, raping, destroying, distorting the natural biome that we have in a community. And that's why Sweden, they hugged, they mixed it up. They were cautious. Maybe this is really serious. And then it's like, maybe it's not so serious. And then the public health folks in Sweden were like, yeah, we're going for a policy of herd immunity. We want people to mix it up with one another. We want them to splish, splash, spit, sneeze, hug, touch, get dirty. And that's a beautiful thing. And then with the mask, it's like recycle your own viruses and your own bacteria and your own carbon dioxide. Avoid that communication and that splish splash, you know? Now with the vaccine, it's like, because we bastardized and ruined, I don't know why I keep using the word bastardized to describe this, but because we ruined our immune system by washing, by being vaccinated all the time. I mean, I filled out the document at my kids' private school having to do with vaccines. Again, my kids aren't vaccinated, but it showed the vaccine schedule, and you're supposed to like check off the schedule of the vaccines that your kids took. There's like 12 different vaccines. Each one of them, it was like hepatitis B, which I think is something that you get from like sharing needles and sex stuff that kids aren't even doing, right? Or maybe it's hep C. And it's like at birth, check that box. At birth, when a little life form has just entered the world, it's already like, stick them with a needle. Not only is that pain trauma, that's like, what the hell is this going on? They're not supposed to experience that kind of pain when they're first entering the world and their first experiences. One of their very first experiences is the pain of coming out of the birth canal, which is natural. But then it's like warmth, comfort, mother's milk, breast, heartbeat. Heartbeat. It's the place that I've been for the past 9 months. Comfort. But then it's like, no, you're coming with us, kid. And you're coming under the white light and the beeping and the noise. And then we're going to prick you and put some chemicals in you. Weird, man. What a weird world we're living in. But I was looking at and then it's like 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 4 years for each one of the vaccines. It's a freaking moneymaker. And you could bet your bottom dollar that the folks that are making money on these vaccines are going to continue to make money on those vaccines. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that you don't get information out that could somehow get in the way of their profit. All right, we're going a little long here. The point is, this whole this public health approach to avoiding viral activity is ass backwards, and it's only going to result in people getting sick when they finally start coming out of the woodwork. And it's a damn shame that there's so many people that have bought into it. If you're watching and you buy into this whole approach on this world, I want to challenge you to start exploring naturopathy, holistic medicine, plant medicine, herbal medicine, and try to change the way that you think about your body and accept and understand that our body is a fine-tuned, well-oiled machine that through long train of human evolution has really refined itself in its ability to maintain balance and homeostasis. And you got to stop popping stuff into it and poking yourself with needles and rushing off to the doctor. Trust your intuition. Trust your gut. It's giving you a lot of signals. When you quiet down and listen to your body, there's a lot of information that can really benefit you. And so you can lead a happy, healthier life. All right. I have an interview to do here in like 6 minutes, but we're going to go through some of these questions real quick. Okay. Raw Power says, as far as I know, that withdrawals from kratom are similar to heroin. Why are you promoting it? It's a drug. It's not like cannabis. Well, for one, it's not a drug. It is the powderized leaves of the kratom evergreen tree that has been used hundreds of years in Southeast Asia with no problems whatsoever. It's most definitely not a drug. I will say there are some people that were formerly dependent on opioids, on prescription pain medicine. There are some people that were formerly addicted to heroin. They utilized kratom in order to overcome the withdrawal symptoms. And then there are people that become physically dependent on kratom. There are people, so this is a 1 ounce bag that should last 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much you take. There are people that take this entire amount in 1 day. Now, if you take something like this, like coffee, for example, and you just pound it every day for months on end, you can become physically dependent. When you try to stop taking it, your body can experience physical withdrawal symptoms. Now, in most cases, these withdrawal symptoms are not nearly as extreme as if someone's withdrawing from heroin or from taking Oxycontin for a decade. However, I discovered a Reddit subgroup about kratom withdrawal, and there's a lot of really scary stories of people that had a hard time. But with great freedom comes great responsibility. So it's why we send a little insert in every single order for a new customer, and we encourage them to use kratom responsibly. And if someone begins to use kratom on a daily basis, it's very encouraged to take a few days off here and there so your body doesn't develop a tolerance, because it's the tolerance that leads people down the slippery slope of physical dependency. So to answer your question, no, in very rare instances are withdrawals from kratom similar to heroin. And no, kratom is not a drug in the least bit. It's a plant. It's the leaf of a tree, right? And here's the catch too. If someone was formerly dependent on heroin and addicted to heroin, I don't use those words interchangeably. Addicted is whenever you're dependent and there's negative consequences and negative outcomes. And even though there's negative aspects and it's causing harm in your life and your relationships, your body, you continue to do it. That's the definition of addicted, according to this guy, Dr. Gabor Mate. Being physically dependent on something, I'm physically dependent on caffeine. In fact, I haven't had kratom today. I didn't have kratom yesterday. I'm doing a break. I'm having a little reset period, right? And previously, I probably took it for like 2 months straight. I didn't have any physical withdrawal symptoms. So although I find when I take kratom, I'm a little more like in the zone, right? But I'm starting to exercise. I'm getting into exercise routine and stuff like that, taking my vitamins and minerals, right? It's all about balance. So, but I'm physically dependent on caffeine, but I'm not addicted to caffeine. I've never been addicted to kratom because there's no negative outcomes for me drinking my clean energy drink, yerba mate, right? So the people that were formerly addicted to kratom and then addicted to heroin, and then become dependent on kratom, they may have a physical dependency, but unless they're so damn dependent on it that they steal from their girlfriend's purse, their mother's purse, so they can go buy the next stash, then it's not necessarily an addiction. They've simply replaced one habit for another. And the benefit is this habit, the kratom, isn't going to kill you. You're not going to overdose on the kratom like you could overdose on heroin or pills. So I just want to throw that out there. All right, let's see what other comments. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the live audience. Theocrat, yep, modern medicine is a for-profit business. They worship money and repeat customers. Yep, and they get kickbacks. None in veterinary medicine either. Veterinary medicine isn't as bad, but it's still a lot of the same thing going on. it's mind-boggling when I see some people who in the health profession and they themselves don't care themselves. That's right. You can tell a lot of the public health folks in Europe and stuff are like really unhealthy and yucky looking. I researched diet for 40 years. I've treated myself longer. Most people hate it when I share, so I stop. But odd thing is, everyone's talking about this now. That's right. Write a script, rinse, repeat. Doctors hail to big pharma. I won't go to a doctor. I hope to not have to go for a long while. Good point. Listen to your body. Theocrat's been sticking with us for a while. It's great. Yeah, synthetic nutrients are devastation to the environment. I agree with you there, but kratom, what the fuck, dude? Stop pushing that shit. Well, raw power, I hope we put, perhaps raw power was once dependent on kratom and had some rough stuff with it. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions, but I'm telling you, man, it's no problem there with kratom. It's a plant, it's natural, and it helps a lot of people. Nice rain clouds just hit us in downtown Georgetown, Texas. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. One more plug for kratom, the controversial plant, not a drug. If you use it responsibly, you'll have no issues whatsoever. A lot of people utilize kratom in order to kick pharmaceuticals, whether it's opioids for pain. A lot of people use it for anxiety and depression as well, and they find that they don't feel loopy, they don't feel weird, they don't have their personality diminished. My girlfriend was able to use kratom to kick a Adderall use for, I don't know, she used it for like 10 years or so, threw her off, really messed up her personality. She would drink to kind of pump the brakes because she was all wired up, because Adderall is essentially like legal meth, and kratom was able to help her overcome that gap, to still have focus, not feel overwhelmed. All natural, helps a lot of people. You can go to freeounceofkratom.com. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This is John Bush signing out. We went a little long on this one, but it was a lot to share. So thanks a lot. Subscribe to the podcast. Be free. Stay healthy, ladies and gentlemen. Listen to your body. It's got a lot to tell you if you'll listen. It'll tell you everything you need to know about how to have optimal health and balance in your life.